Hi everyone, welcome to the Hazel Storm, and we're going to be going over today the age-old question of whether or not caving is dangerous, whether or not it's reckless to get into this outdoor sport, this hobby. Really diving into the reasons why there's this stigma culturally, historically, online against caving, as well as some examples of things that create that sort of stigma, as well as looking at the actual numbers, putting stats behind caving accidents and caving fatalities. So, if we look over exactly why there's this stigma against caving, I think it really comes down to one word, and that's claustrophobia. For those that don't know, claustrophobia is the fear of tight spaces. And I think pretty much everyone has that to some degree, but largely is something that's very biological, very ingrained in our DNA, such as the fear of heights. All of these things have helped protect us. And so when we think about going underground, it's very far away from the sun. You might get stuck. You're very constrained, and I think all of that leads to the idea that going underground voluntarily and putting yourself in potentially tight spaces really is quite terrifying. So if you look at culturally, like you have examples like Gollum's cave in Lord of the Rings. It looks in the movie, for example, it looks pretty dastardly, and there's this really old and creepy creature that's crawling in. Besides that, you have maybe the catacombs in Paris. And so when people think of caves, they think of bats, they think of very dark and dreary things, and so really that's the reason why it's part of our DNA. So there's no reason to get upset about it, and understand that it's biologically driven. So us being a Utah company, we have some caves nearby, a few different caving accidents that have happened over the last couple of years. There's two specifically that come to mind that are very tragic. But we have a first example. There was a caving accident near BYU where five different students went to this very small cave where essentially you had a section where you had to go underwater, essentially free diving, following this rope to get to this small space, this small cavern on the other side. And essentially, you would go, look around. There really wasn't that much to see, but you would dive back in. And so what happened is these five students went through. They held their breath. They were fine. They made it to the other side. One student was able to hold his breath and come back, and the other four students waited. And so eventually, the oxygen started to run out. So when they took their full breaths, they weren't able to get necessarily sufficient oxygen to make it to the other side. And in the confusion, they unfortunately passed away. And so, although these weren't exactly cavers, they were people exploring caves, and so this cave was sealed off by the government officials. So the next one that is probably is more popular. There was only one fatality in this incident with a cave called Nutty Putty Cave, which is very near this cave on the other side of the lake, where there was a medical student who was visiting Utah and decided to go through this cave. And just to give everyone some context of this particular cave, there are sections of it that are very tight. Like we have this video here that was shot a few years before that incident. This is a place called the Birth Canal, essentially where it's very tight. There's sections that you have to like contort your shoulders and move your body to be able to get through. And it's it isn't necessarily life threatening. It's certainly scary. But what ended up happening is this caver thought that it was in this section, but he ended up getting lost, and he was in a much more tight section. So if you look at this video, this is shot a little later. So this shows where the caver got lost. There's this little cavern, which they'll show you in just a sec. They're illuminating the whole piece, but this is where he should have gone. This is the birth canal. It's a very small area, but where he ended up going was this section right here. So it has a wider mouth, but what it ends up is it leads into like a very small kind of unmapped part of the cave called Ed's Push. And he had thinking that he was in this this birth canal, which is very tight, but not necessarily life threatening. But he put himself into a situation where he was trapped as we see in this diagram that was created by Brandon. He was trapped upside down, and his arms were contorted in a very, very complicated way where he wasn't able to get himself out. And, unfortunately, he was, despite all the rescuers that came in, it was just such a tight space. Like, this is the sort of space that they were working with. Like, these are a couple of the rescuers that you didn't have the leverage to be able to really get a good purchase on him to pull him out. So, unfortunately, he passed away. And so when people think of like caving accidents, like this is what they think about. Getting stuck in these really crazy contorted ways, and getting stuck, and like generally, this is generally what people think about when it comes to caving accidents, and why a lot of people have fears. I think in reality, like, a lot of people have been through this cave, and not necessarily a lot of people had died in it. Only one person. But if we step away from these examples, because these are really the only two main examples of caving deaths here in Utah. Let's look at the statistics, because there was a study that was published here in at NIH official website, where they talk about caving incidents, where they analyzed 1,300 victims of caving accidents over the course of 28 years. And what they found was, first, 83% of the victims were male. It seems like most caving accidents are by males, aged from 2 to 69, but on average 27 years. So by and large, a lot of the accidents are happening by males in their 20s. And if you look at the fatalities, they said most of the injuries were not life-threatening. However, the course of 28 years, there were 81 documented fatalities here in the United States. And if you think about, like, what are the fatalities coming from? Are they coming from, going underwater and drowning? Are they coming from, like, being stuck in a super tight place that you cannot be recovered from? They said, in general, the overall participating event leading to injuries is falling. And I think that's something that you don't necessarily think about, is it's from falling, which is a risk associated with pretty much every outdoor sport, even probably some of the more risky ones like skydiving or climbing, hiking, backpacking. Like, falling is a major risk, and it seems to also be the driving risk factor here in caving as well. So that's something to kind of know, like putting some stats behind really what the injuries are coming from caves. So there's this cave formation here in Utah, probably the most popular and large. It's called Timpanogos Cave, here in the Wasatch Mountains, and honestly, it's very beautiful. It's a very large cave, not quite the tiny hole that was in the Nanapati Cave, but essentially there are many different deaths with this cave. But something that you don't necessarily think about is all the cave deaths associated with this particular cave are on the trail leading to the cave, and all of them are from falls, either falls that caused the death from the high height, or by falling into the river and then drowning. And something that is very, very tragic, but something that you don't necessarily think about is, like, most of these deaths in this cave are from going to the cave on the trail. And this is shown in the evidence here. This is all the incidents, and every single one of them are from, like, moving vehicles that either fell off, or there was some sort of like this particular one that had the pickup was a 3-wheeled ATV. It had been carried, were removed from the river. So essentially, this ATV fell in the river on its way up, and I think an employee died. There's 4 fatalities associated with this. There were some drowning incidents. I think there was a situation where 2 people with the same first name died within 1 week from each other on this trail. And so, really, in Utah, everyone talks about the Nanapati Cave incidents, but don't necessarily talk about the fact that people are dying on their way to the caves just hiking, standard hiking. And there's what's called Zion National Park in southern Utah. It's a desert national park. Honestly, in my opinion, probably the most beautiful national park here in the United States, and potentially one of the most beautiful views in the whole world. And probably the crown jewel of that national park is this one hike called Angel's Landing, where what you have to do is you have to follow these chains up like the spine of this cliff to get to this rock that's in the middle of this valley. And the really scary part about this is there's a whole lot of sheer cliffs right next to the to where you're hiking. And I've been on this many times, and essentially there's a part where you have sheer cliffs on both sides of you. And unfortunately, sheer cliffs and plus a whole lot of people going through them have led to many deaths. And I think recorded here we have 14 people that we've known who've died on this single hike since 1987. It looks like here the most recent one was in March of 2021. So I think that goes to show that, like, if you're looking at all the sort of outdoor sports here in Utah, we have a few different, groups, of novice sort of cave explorers who have died, and then you have a whole lot of people who've unfortunately fallen on the way to Timpanogos Cave, and it seems like a whole lot of people have fallen Angel's Landing. And I think to take that one step further, very close to Angel's Landing in the same national park, this is not very far away, like probably within 3 or 4 miles. There's what's called the Narrows, and the Narrows, very beautiful. Essentially, this virgin river right here has cut out the bottom of this the limestone rock. And what it's done is this forms super tall walls. And at the bottom, this river continues to erode the limestone down. And it's incredible. My favorite hike in Zion, my favorite hike in Utah, probably the most beautiful one I've ever been on. Besides maybe Havasupai Falls in Arizona. But the risk with this particular sport is you're hiking through the river. And in desert conditions, flash flooding is a major risk. It could rain very quickly right now and essentially have walls of water pouring on you. And even if it isn't rain where you are, sometimes rain upstream can essentially send huge waves of water down the river, and it be life threatening, and has killed quite a few people here. There's this website has published some stats about Zion Park deaths since 2007 to 2024, and it shows that 29 people have fallen. Either the 14 on Angel's Landing, or there's other hikes where people have fallen, or there's 8 deaths associated with flash floods. A few from drowning, and some other that are associated with larger, like overexertion, maybe a medical issue, or other sort of crashes, things like that. So I think it goes to show that there's a whole lot of different deaths, that and risks associated with outdoor sports. And probably the most famous here in Utah is skiing and snowboarding. We have honestly the greatest snow on earth. It's a desert. It's very dry, and so our snow is very powdery, and it's really the reason why people come from all over the world, like from Asia, from Africa, from Australia, Europe, everywhere, South America. They come here to Utah to ski our powder snow. And there's unfortunately here a lot of risks associated with avalanches, where huge walls of snow can bury someone very quickly. And every single year, there's a lot of people that die, unfortunately. And like here, if we look at this most recent season, which probably extends since December, we have 5 people that died from avalanches. Skier, snowboarder, or snowmobiler, and unknown. It could be for a hiker or a snowshoer or anything like that. But avalanches are very risky. And a lot of them happen at major ski resorts. Like Brighton is a very large ski resort, and here in Utah. And so if we look at maybe an example of kind of what this can look like, this is a skier in France. So he's just skiing down. All of a sudden, boom. He is carried into this, honestly, fissure of doom. Like this, between a glacier, there's this fissure that has opened up, and he luckily was able to arrest himself and move his skis sideways, probably more by luck, and be able to stop his fall. And I think it's fantastic that he was able to get this on GoPro, because it shows a lot of the risk associated. Like, that was pure white powder that he was skiing through, and all of a sudden, boom, opened up, and he gets sucked in. And so this right here, that's terrifying, honestly. And I think this goes to show that really Any outdoor sport you're gonna do is gonna have risks. Caving, it's gonna have risks. Hiking to the caves is gonna have risks. Pretty much anything you do is gonna have risks. There's risks in life. There's risks in doing nothing. Like if we look at car accidents here in Utah in a single year, we had 332 fatalities. And that's just from everyday driving. And there's a study that published here in 2017. Almost 4,000 people in Utah died from heart disease, and almost 1,000 people died from a stroke. And so outdoor sports have risks. Regular living life has risks, and so I think if we look at everything that's going on, like there's still cars on the road. There's a lot of things that might lead to heart disease that are available. The ski resorts, there's accidents and avalanches, but they remain open. But in both cases in Utah, the caves were shut because of deaths. And so I think overall, what you understand is like caving isn't necessarily uniquely different than doing anything else. And this really is what most caves look like. I know we talked about this Nutty Putty cave going through this super tight hole. Like really, this isn't, by and large, this isn't the caves that people are going through. Like this is an example of the largest cave in the world. It's actually here in Kentucky, United States. And what you have here is a lot of climbing. Like look right there. Like that's someone climbing through the cave. It isn't necessarily like a cave unique accident. If there was some sort of issue related to this, like that's a repelling accident. So, like largely a lot of the caves people are going through, they're fairly large, a lot of spaces. Or we have the Timpanogos Cave here in Utah, which have beautiful formations. There's a whole lot of reasons to do this. Caving is not the thrill-seeking sort of sport that a lot of people think about. It really is a wonderful thing to look at. And this is a cave in Carlsbad. Beautiful stalactites, beautiful stalagmites, absolutely incredible limestone formations that have been formed over thousands of years. So it's this isn't the thing to get into if you're wanting to get some sort of fix from doing something super risky. It isn't jumping out of a plane. It's just really kind of exploring places that other people don't see normally. Like this is incredible. Like that right here, incredible formation. And oftentimes they're led by these rangers. Like here in the Timpanogos cave system, they're led by rangers largely. So I think overall, if I were to say like why people do it, it all comes down to this quote here by JFK, very very famous. We were going to the moon, very ambitious plan. He said, "We do these things not because they are easy, but because they are hard." Like we engage in a lot of these outdoor activities. They're risky in some ways. Fortunately, accidents do happen, even to the smartest people. Like a slight miscalculation sometimes can be fatal. The slight miscalculation in driving can be fatal as well. And we do things because they're hard. So anyway, leave any sort of comment here in the video. Feel free to like and subscribe. We plan on bringing more gear recommendations, giving an overview of different outdoor sports. If you like this sort of content, just click to be notified for alerts. Okay, catch you later.